For the n-Lorem Foundation, N of 1 doesn't mean alone because every patient matters. Hope for nano-rare patients and their families has never been more within reach. Visit n-Lorem.org today to donate and make hope possible. This episode of the n-Lorem Patient Empowerment Program podcast is proudly sponsored by Hanjin Biotech. With more than 26 years of experience in the nucleic acid industry, Hanjin is a specialized CDMO and raw material supplier committed to providing high-quality and high-value products and services with the best-in-class lead times.
Hello and welcome to the n-Lorem podcast series, the only podcast series focused exclusively on the needs of patients with nano-rare mutations. I'm Stan Crook. I'm chairman and CEO of n-Lorem, and I'm your host for the podcast series. And today, our special guests are Megan Hedstrom and Tom Lowe. Welcome, folks. We're glad to have you today.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. One of the unexpected joys of doing n-Lorem for me personally has been I've met many wonderful people and families, and many of the individuals and families I've met are contending with the duress of having a loved one suffer from a set of problems that are poorly defined. There doesn't seem to be anybody who understands them. And that puts a tremendous stress on individuals and families. And when I think of families who've handled that set of circumstances with grace, I think of the Tom Lowe and Megan Hedstrom family. And so it's a great pleasure to have you here. I'm embarrassed to admit that we're so myopic at n-Lorem that when we think of you guys, we think of Megan as Sloane's mom and Tom as Sloane's granddad. We know you're much more than just that. So this will be nice to expand our horizons away from just your function, as it were, with regard to n-Lorem. So welcome. It's great to see you.
Good to see you.
Yeah. So I suppose the place to start is the beginning, Megan. Before you had Sloane, you had a couple of boys, right?
I have a girl and a boy. Yep.
Uh-huh.
Griffin she's 8 now, and Declan is 6. So Declan was, I guess, 2.5 when Sloane was born, and Griffin was 4.5. So had a few years of parenting experience under my belt.
Yeah, and that's probably a good thing.
Yeah.
So how did you come to realize something was wrong with Sloane, or that she wasn't developing?
Right. Sloane was pretty typically developing until about 6 months. She was a COVID baby, so we weren't doing a lot of, the mommy and me stuff as a baby. But I did notice that she was starting to get a flat head, and I experienced that with my other 2 kids. So that wasn't concerning at all to me. I started doing the massaging of the muscles, and we went to the chiropractor. I did that with my other kids. So again, that didn't alarm me. But it wasn't getting any better. So that's kind of where I had to stop with my other 2 kids. With Sloane, we ended up seeing an occupational therapist, just so that I was just trying to avoid getting a helmet. And because it was COVID, I enjoyed getting out of the house with a baby. And it was time that my mom would be nice enough to take my other 2 kids. And it was something for her and I to do together. And I formed a friendship with the occupational therapist. And so we'd go once a week or every other week. And it would get better, and then it would get worse. And so it honestly just was kind of something to do with her. And we started seeing her, I think, about 2 months. And then at 6 months, we just started doing normal things that a 6-month-old would be working on. She had no issues with tummy time. She had good head and neck control when she was supported at her core. But then we started working on sitting at around the 8 assisted sitting at the 6-month mark. And as soon as you took away that support at her core and moved down to her like legs and her hips, we called it the bobblehead. Her head would just go like this. And I, as a mom of 2 other kids, knew that wasn't normal. And just the occupational therapist agreed, said it might not be anything. She might just be a little bit behind in core strength. Pediatrician said, come back in a month. I just had that mom gut feeling something was wrong. Talked about it with the occupational therapist, and she said, just go ahead and make an appointment with the neurologist. If you don't need it, you can cancel it, but they typically take a while to get in to see. So at least you've got it on the books if you need it. So I think I ended up, so many of the appointments you can book online now. And so I just obsessively would refresh the appointments page, and there, I think a cancellation came up and I booked it. And so within 2 or 3 weeks of noticing the head bobble, we got in to see a neurologist, and she was, funny enough, not her normal self at the doctor's office, which prompted her to do a genetic panel. And KIF1A associated neurological disorder came back about a month after. We went back for our results, and Sloane was her typical happy, bubbly self. And the doctor even said if she would have been like this, I never would have suggested a genetic test. But I guess she just knew we needed to know. And so at 7 months, we got a diagnosis, which is kind of crazy.
That's remarkably fast.
Yeah.
And of course, it's a very attentive mom who has some experience, and Sloane cooperated by being a little cranky, I suppose.
Yes, exactly. She just knew we wanted to know.
Which I can't imagine. The times I've seen Sloane, she's just this happy, sweet, wonderful.
She really is. It was
Yeah.
odd that she wasn't like that. So really some divine intervention happened that day so that we could get a diagnosis so early.
Mhm. And so it comes back, KIF1A. What the
Yes.
heck is KIF1A, and what does that mean? And what's my child going to experience?
Right. Nowadays you immediately get on Google. And we found an organization, KIF1A, .org. Luke and Sally Rosen founded. And I think we got a diagnosis on a Thursday. We emailed them and we had a video call with them, I think Monday or Tuesday of the following week. So we had a genetic counselor kind of go over basic symptoms that we could expect, but she had no idea what we were going to be going through. So Luke got her genetic report and told us what her variant was like. We immediately asked who we needed to see, and he said Dr. Chung in New York City. So this was all in August of 2021, and we got an appointment in December of 2021 to meet with Dr. Chung in New York.
So Sloane's remarkably fortunate in many, many ways. She
Yes.
has a loving family with resources to get her cared for, and to travel to New York.
Yes.
And remarkably fortunately, a genetic panel identified the problem.
Right.
But when you talk to the neurologists or other experts, could you find out what might happen next, what to expect?
Yeah, so we were told, she would have motor function problems, cognitive disabilities, potential for seizures. We needed to watch for hip dysplasia. We needed to get her into therapy right away. That was the biggest recommendation, was get her into physical therapy, occupational, and speech therapy as many hours a week as she could put up with it. So that kind of became her full-time job, was doing therapy. Starting at, I think, 8 months old, like really soon after her diagnosis, she started doing, I think, 15 hours a week of therapy. And we've continued that since her diagnosis. So doctors we need to see, ophthalmology, because this disorder can have eye problems, and she does have optic nerve atrophy. We see an orthopedist because of her hips and bones. We see neurology. We see the pediatrician on a regular basis. So a lot of specialists to see.
It's a profound impact, I would assume, on the
Yeah.
whole family.
Our life changed pretty immediately because we had to do what was going to make Sloane the strongest. And like you mentioned, I have a lot of family here. My dad is with me, and my mom lives here, and I have 2 sisters. And so it kind of became a whole family affair. I focus on Sloane's doctor's appointments and day-to-day therapies, and my dad was getting ready to retire, and really wanted to focus on giving back to the community. And it just kind of all fell into place that he was able to take time to start researching treatments and kind of long-term goals for Sloane to help combat this disorder.
So you're a remarkable story in many ways. Rapid diagnosis, and a gene panel actually identified the problem, and there was already an association and a little bit known about KIF1A problems.
Yes.
And you had the opportunity to talk to parents who had unfortunately learned a lot about the more severe characteristics of the disease with their
Right.
daughter.
Yes,
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they
And
definitely gave us a good view and a big head start, as not a lot of families get that. So we're incredibly grateful.
yeah. And you're one of the families that everybody sort of lives close there in Scottsdale.
Yes.
And that
I don't know how we
must have
wouldn't
been
be able to do it, especially having 2 older kids. One of the things that we talked about as a family was wanting to keep their lives as normal as possible. So being able to have, them do after school activities and feel like, they don't need to be resentful of their sister that they don't get to do things that they want to do. So it's a all hands on deck approach for sure.
Yeah. So balancing a commitment to your child with KIF1A problems and your other children, assuring that they're not excluded,
Yeah.
which can happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how's that gone?
Good. But like I said, I ask for help a lot, and I'm not embarrassed about it anymore. I think as a new mom with my other 2 kids, I kind of had a mentality of I can do it all. And I think my dad can attest that I didn't ask for help a lot. And that's a big mental strain on parents, but especially on the mom. And so then with Sloane, I just threw that out the window, and I was like, I need help. I got to ask for help in order to give everybody the best life that they can. So I really lean into my family, and we've got an amazing community of friends that knows about Sloane, and we've got neighbors, and that everybody pitched in.
And Sloane is an amazing story in other ways, at the molecular level as well, because eventually she got sequenced.
Yes.
And out of that sequencing, we learned that not only did she have a pathogenic variant that was causing the problem, but she had a non-pathogenic variant that was basically the same as in Luke and Sally's daughter,
Mm-hmm.
which meant that we could use the same ASO that Susanna had, Sloane, and that facilitated much more rapid intervention and a variety of other things. So Sloane's got unfortunate genetics, but she's had fortunate events around that.
Definitely agree.
Yeah. And so, and of course, Tom, you got involved in the KIF1A Association, and I don't remember exactly how we came to interact, but it had a big impact on you and your plans as well, I suppose.
Yes, I was on the tail end of my career, and so I was moving into retirement.
Mhm.
And have been shutting things down. So when Sloane was diagnosed, I was able to finish shutting things down pretty quickly. and try and go focus on Sloane full time, or as much as I could, and really jumped in with Luke Rosen, who is just a remarkable guy, and tried to support him and his team at kif1a.org as best I could. And we ended up finding you, obviously, through kif1a.org, then Dr. Chung, and ultimately to you. While we were working with just kif1a.org, they had gone down the path of repurposing existing drugs, which has not been fruitful yet. I think there was some DNA therapy approaches that hadn't panned out. They had been working with your previous company on one, I think, overarching ASO for all the different mutations, which I guess they decided was too dangerous given what they were trying to accomplish. And so it was looking pretty grim. I hate to use that word, but it was. And there was some good news on gene therapy, but that's 10 or 15 years out. And a lot of these kids don't have that kind of time. And when you started n-Lorem, that wasn't much before. I think Sloane was diagnosed. I think you had just started that and started working on rare disease. And that's really where all of the hope started to arise, is when that started happening for our community, and where n-Lorem has taken us. So it's been a long journey, but relatively speaking, ours has been fast. We've been incredibly fortunate
and hopeful, and surprisingly hopeful, right?
Yes.
And hope matters.
Yes. Well, it's just going from having that difficult assessment that you may not be able to do anything to and the primary reason just being because the funding just isn't there, given the lack of commercial viability for treatments. And that's hard to get over, because you just don't think that there's a solution. Well, when n-Lorem came along, and for us, overnight, meaning in 12 or 18 months, was developing a drug and doing this. I mean, it's still expensive, but I mean, I was told that drug development was billions of dollars and took 10 or 15 years. And along comes, this outfit that's doing it in a year or two for an amount of money that is achievable. It wasn't just for kif1a. It was the hope that it created in the rare disease world as a whole, because we've, connected with other, families that have other disorders. And it's just been exciting to have all of that happen overnight, without really paying much attention that it took 30 years to develop that.
I have gray hair now. I didn't have gray hair when I started at Ionis. We're all over.
It's pretty remarkable. Yeah. And so we're excited about the future.
Yeah, that's moving from despair to looking forward with something positive is a big part of what n-Lorem wants to do, I think. And so Sloane is a unique situation in so many ways. She has the same mutation. She has the same problem as a number of other children, including Susanna, Luke and Sally's child, who was one of the earliest patients we treated. And we're able to use Susanna's medicine, and what we have to do with Sloane and Susanna and others, since the KIF1A gene is an essential gene, is we have to selectively alter the level of the mutant and not affect the normal copy of that gene. And that takes the kind of specificity that only antisense technology can do today. And that itself is remarkable. And then Sloane is much earlier in the progression of her disease than, say, Susanna. And so the decision to treat early was itself an interesting decision. And to make that decision to have your daughter treated with an experimental medicine that has to be injected in her spinal fluid, which means she has to be anesthetized and go through all that. How did you wrestle with all that and come to the decision to treat?
Really, the only reason I think we were willing to try it was because of Susanna. Like you mentioned, Sloane's 3 right now. She's turning 4 this weekend, but she had not started. She was still making gains, and she hadn't started to regress in any way. And so until Susanna and Luke and Sally were willing to try it, we weren't sure we wanted to, because we didn't want to take away whatever good years we had with her before we could be sure that the drug was going to be safe. So we're incredibly grateful to Luke and Sally and Susanna that they were willing to test it first. And we saw what it did for her, and that she didn't have any severe reactions or detrimental reactions. And that made us comfortable giving it to Sloane.
And for me, it was, because there's, some level of research on ASOs going on in other parts of the country and the world. And, it hasn't always worked out. And, we got comfortable and ended up with the confidence that the n-Lorem approach was different from really anybody else. And look, there's no guarantees. We know that. But this has just turned out from a safety perspective with n-Lorem to be, there's such a big focus on that it has really helped us with confidence in taking the higher and higher doses, and experiment a little bit in hopes that this is going to become something that you can buy us the time for the 10 or 15 years until gene editing comes about, and be able to use this to help, these other kids. We're hoping that we can be a part of that. So
you make the tough decision to treat, and it's really tough when your child isn't super symptomatic. Susanna was already quite symptomatic when we began treating her. So how's it gone?
Good, but there's been scary things too. She picked up a little bug in the hospital after her first dose, and the administrating doctor is very calm on the phone. She's like, I think you should maybe just come in just to get checked out. And she's there, and they immediately rush us to a CT scan, and all was well. It was literally just the stomach flu that she had, but just because it's so experimental, we're all just, on super high alert. I saw her, I immediately burst into tears because I don't know what's going on, because she was so calm on the phone. But it ended up being nothing. But you are on like extra high alert, and anything that happens, you're like, well, is this something? Is this something, for good and bad? But she started getting treated in May. So we're, what is that, 6 months, a little over 6 months in. And she's doing great. The thing that I didn't expect, that I think we've all been so excited, her speech and cognitive is where we've seen the most change. So she's becoming this, like, I mean, she's always been this little person, but like she can interact with, I mean, she's always interacted, but the ability for her to be able to, she jokes with us. She plays like hide and seek. She is saying 2 to 3 word sentences. And her favorite show is Miss Rachel on TV. She sings along to songs with her. I was getting her lunch ready the other day, and they play this hide and seek game, and she's doing it in her high chair. She never would have been able to do that before. So she's really engaging with her surroundings, which has been so fun and exciting to see. And then we're starting to notice changes in her fine motor. She has tremors in her hands that have been going away with each dose. And then her gross motor skills, it's slow, don't get me wrong, but any change for us is big change. So
Yeah, and for us, nobody in our family had any background in science whatsoever. Let's just say that getting through high school biology and chemistry was challenging for me. But that complicates matters when you're having to try and make decisions about these things. And the trying to understand benefits, the science community's got all these measures for, the 5-minute walk test and this and that. And, none of those really help us.
Yeah.
Because she doesn't walk. And so the gauges for measuring the progress has been frustrating, because they gauge this on things that just don't seem to be applicable to Sloane. All we know is that there's been a world of difference. And like Megan has said, cognitively, it's been remarkable. And again, I don't have any proof on, okay, the shot caused all of this, or whether it was a normal progression. All we know is that she gets the treatment, and it's almost immediate. Immediately after that, these advances in particularly speech are just remarkable. And I don't know if all of those type of things get taken into account with regard to her engagement, her quality of life, and those type of things. I'm not being critical of the science community at all, but to have better measures for this kind of a treatment, I think is an important thing, because I don't think it's a great system right now with how the benefits of this is being measured.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. Obviously, we've had to invent the process.
No, I understand it. Yeah.
And every patient is different. And Sloane is very different from Susanna. Susanna had progressed to the place where she was in a wheelchair. She was having terrible seizure problems and all kinds of measurable things. And with Sloane, less measurable. And I think we're learning a lot, so much important stuff. But we're learning more every day about how to use parent and caregiver assessments better, because there's real value in that information that's largely been dismissed in the past because of concern about placebo effect and all that, and how to assess progress in cognition and the ability to interact and all of these things that we take for granted and never tried to measure in the past. And so it's we're learning all that as we go, and we're also learning. I think maybe the most exciting thing we're learning is that the brain is much more plastic than I was taught. That even with advanced disease, we can see patients recovering functions that they lost decades ago, gaining functions they never had. We got all worked up at n-Lorem when you told us that Sloane counted to 10. I mean, my goodness.
I know.
If she can count to 10, that's probably a step up from me, but certainly that's a big deal, right?
Yeah.
And that matters.
Yeah.
One of the things that, again, I don't know how you could measure this, but just from an interaction standpoint, it looks to us like the degeneration has slowed. And again, I don't know how you measure that, but that is such a critical thing for us because, we're looking 10 or 20 years down the road with some of these advances in other areas like gene editing that can provide a permanent one-time treatment for, Sloane. And we've seen you do that in this SMA, where it started out and ultimately, they developed a single treatment for these kids. We're hoping that this is slowing that degeneration and buying us that time for those future advances. I don't know if that's something that can be determined today or not, but we're very hopeful about that. And it certainly appears that way to us.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what appears is probably what is real. We're learning that, and I think one of the major deficits in our ability to measure is social interactions, and we are social beings. We need to interact. We need to be able to share emotions and so on, and we can't measure any of that effectively, in my view. And who can? Well, caregivers and the like. And so we're trying to learn how to do that. But it's all new territory. And so what we'll learn with Sloane is very different from what we're learning with Susanna. And in its own way, even more important because Sloane is less advanced in her disease. And therefore it's harder to measure.
Right.
And of course, we don't know what to expect for Sloane in the coming years, how much she'll progress. Will she look like Susanna if we don't treat? These are things that are unknown that all of us have to sort of do our best to try to learn.
Well, we see her as being incredibly happy and socially interactive and contributing to the family, and just when she's able to interact, you start to understand her purpose. I mean, she brought empathy to our family and to our friends and compassion, and she is and it's not a completely sad thing like you might think. I mean, this has brought joy to our family, having this type of social interaction and her living a happy life. It's really remarkable. And we're like I said, we're excited about the future.
Yeah.
Well, we are too. And, my experience is that good people take what life gives them and find the joy in it and make the best of it. And what we see is good people wrestling with bad situations and making the best of it. That's it's a wonderful experience.
Yeah, I agree.
And families rallying together to support one another in ways that they might not have in the absence of these challenges. So it's I remember coming down to Phoenix to visit with the family and meeting Sloane. She was such a delightful little girl. It was hard to believe she was sick, but she is.
Yeah.
But and I just want to throw this little tidbit in. Now that she is engaging with her siblings, it impacts her siblings as well.
Sure.
And it's something we talk about all the time, just how these, her brother and her sister are just, it's not like we talk about her having any special need or anything. It's just kind of part of the family dynamic. And the kids, it's perfectly normal to them.
Yeah.
When Sloane is when Griffin is at school, for instance, because she's got a relationship with her younger sister, oh, hey, this is no big deal. When she's at school, she goes and plays with special needs kids. I mean, because it's like just a perfectly natural thing for her. And I mean, Griffin goes and plays with the special needs kids at school. And it's really a special thing. And it's all because they're able to have that social interaction with their sibling and have a relationship. And it just lends to the quality of life for everybody, not just her. It's really made all of us, including my two other grandchildren, Megan's two other children, just
more empathetic.
More empathetic, sweet people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's making the best of everything, and making the best of things is about love.
Yeah.
In the end. And n-Lorem is, an act of compassion and love, basically.
Yeah.
So, well, I just committed exactly the sin that I said I wouldn't commit, and that is focusing entirely on Sloane and your roles with Sloane. So, okay.
It's okay, Dr.
That's
Kirk. You know
okay.
what? I'll tell you, even with my two older kids, when their friends come over, if I see their friends at school, I am Griffin's mom, Declan's mom, Sloane's mom. That is my identity. So I don't mind it at all.
Well, so Tom, how is retirement going for you? What are you doing these days?
Well, part of this whole process is trying to figure out your lane, where you fit in to the picture here. And, it took me a while, but not having any science background, I'm not going to be able to contribute in any way. Trust me, you don't want me to.
I haven't asked.
Once you realize what the bottom line here is, and I don't mean to be crass, but the bottom line is support for the science community and researchers. And at the end of the day, I said, all right, this hasn't worked out with me being able to make any meaningful contribution on the other side. Go back to work and try and, put money together for research and support. So I went back to work That's been a whole another interesting experience. The world's changed in the last 4 years. But it's actually going well. We'll be back up and running after the last year or so. We'll be up and running in the next few months. And so our hope is to participate in that way.
Yeah.
And
So
and that's
what does we are up and running mean? What is the business?
well, I'm in the development business, and the the problem with that is that they're very long lead times from the time that you design things and then build things and then get them to the point where they can start generating revenue takes
Yeah, tell me about it.
takes years.
I'm in the 25-year business.
Yeah, so you can understand, but
Oh, I can.
but we already had some things to start with, and that's what I've gone back to ramp up. And so we're on schedule, and so we'll be up and running in the spring with new developments and things that will allow me to do some of the stuff that our families decided we want to do.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. And Megan, let's talk about something other than Sloane. Okay. You went to University of Arizona. What did you study there?
I studied accounting, so I also do not have a science background. So I feel like I've taken a crash course in genetics and biology and chemistry in the last 4 years.
It's not that horrible. It's actually a lot of fun.
Now, if I knew what I know now, I wish I would have picked some type of medical degree or science background. But yes, went to U of A, had a great experience there, studied accounting, moved to LA with some friends after college. I met my husband over there, and then we moved back here and got married and started having kids because we wanted to be around family. So thank goodness.
And so Griffin is now 8.
Griffin is 8, yes, and she's in 2nd grade. She's very into dance. She does competitive dance. So that takes up all her extracurricular activities. And then Declan is 6 and in kindergarten, and he's still trying to figure out what his passions are. So we alternate between, he's doing basketball right now. He'll do baseball in the spring. He's starting golf today. So still trying to hone in on what his passions are. But
well, you guys got a golf course that you own anyway, right? Go out there.
No, maybe he'll be a golf professional.
Yeah, well,
yeah, they're thriving. Everybody really is thriving.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Well, it's great catching up with you, and I am deeply apologetic for focusing solely on Sloane in this conversation, which I didn't plan to do, but it's hard to leave that topic.
Yeah.
It's why we're here, really.
Yeah.
Well, Stan, I do want to get this in here. The in light, there's a lot of difficulties with all this, and we don't want to candy coat that. However, having that light has really changed our lives.
Mm-hmm.
And that's come from you and your team at n-Lorem. And we understand you already had your career. You retired off to, you could have gone and lived the life of Riley and been doing a lot of other things that don't put the demands on you that you have. We appreciate that. It's also been an inspiration for me to go, I'm not washed up, I'm in my going into my late 60s, and I'm like, well, wait a minute, Stan's older than I am.
I'm a lot older. I'm in better shape though,
Yeah. Unfortunately, that's true. But no, it's you and your team have changed our lives in ways you cannot imagine. And we thank you for that.
No, that's very kind of you. Your family and the patients of n-Lorem have changed my life in ways that I would not have expected. As a physician, I cared for patients and I missed seeing them. And to have this experience at this stage in my life and career is a privilege. So it's all good.
Well, it's also a lot of work, and we know it.
Yeah, it's a lot of raising money most of the time, but anyway, but the science is amazing, and what we're doing is a set of miracles. I mean, you think about the ability to make the diagnosis today, which is a product of genomics, which didn't begin in 2000. It began in 1954 with Watson and Crick. And that at the same time as we're able to do that, along comes the technology that I led the creation of, and it can do these things.
Yeah.
These are miracles wrought by science,
Yeah.
and I hope that everyone listening understands that science takes time and patience, but it yields miracles. And as we go through the next few years, we need to protect the scientific community because it is the source of miracles.
No question. How long did it take you to develop your first ASO? Just out of curiosity.
The first ASO was fairly quick. That's one of the lessons that is hard for people to learn. With new drug discovery technologies, you can often have success with the first product because you're asking very little of it, but you still have a long road ahead. So I think probably the way I'd rather answer that is to say that when I started Ionis, and I certainly didn't say this that as bluntly as I'm saying it now, I believe strongly that the probability of success was near zero, that it would be at least 20 years and at least $2 billion before I knew. Would you like to invest? It's not a great thesis for investment, but that speaks to another miracle, which is the power of American capitalism, enlightened capitalism, and so it turned out to be about 20 years and about $2 billion before I knew. And it took an extra 7 or 8 years and another $1 billion before the rest of the world would believe me. So it was a long haul.
But what's remarkable to me is, we don't see that history.
Mhm.
We see that, oh, wow, you developed this ASO for Susanna in a year and a half or 2 years, whatever it was, and I don't know what it cost you, but it was some reasonable amount of money. And to go from taking decades and billions of dollars to being able to do this today in a relatively short period of time for a relatively modest amount of money relative to the industry for other drug discovery, it is incredible. And that's it's just amazing to think of where that can lead for all these rare diseases, which aren't, I've learned, so rare, and it impacts such a large percentage of the population. I don't know if it's 8 or 10%. It's just remarkable where this can lead. And again, that's what's so
thrilling.
exciting.
It really is thrilling. It's unbelievably exciting to me. And then to take it even to a finer point, imagine if someone had said 30 years ago or 40 years ago that we will selectively alter just the mutant protein and RNA and not the essential RNA and protein in Sloane cells. That's the thing that amazes me still, that we can do that. And that's a product of just steady scientific progress.
But that's the disappointing thing for me is you would think that money would flock to this technology. And I've learned the hard way, and you already knew that's just not the case. It is, figuring out how to put this money together is almost as big a job as the science at this point. It seems
It's the bigger job, actually.
Is it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is
Yeah.
just sad. I mean, I don't know how else to say it. It's just sad that that's the case, knowing that you can help potentially millions of people
The technology is there.
for relatively modest sums of money, and that you can't do that quickly is that's the most disheartening thing in all this.
Well, yeah, I feel that some days, and then there are other days that I think it's remarkable that we've been able to raise the money we have to do what we're doing. And so there are just so many good uses of money and so little money, really.
Yeah.
So I look at it as getting the message out, making a difference in patients' lives and families' lives, and letting the work speak for itself. And eventually, we'll have sufficient funds to do the scale that we want to do, which is nowhere. I mean, we're nowhere close to the scale that we need to be today. But that's the nature of doing something that's never been done before, too. When you do things that have never been done before, you get used to people saying it'll never work. When I started Ionis, antisense will never work. For 25 years, we heard that. And when I started n-Lorem, well, where's the money going to come from? I don't know exactly. I'm going to go find some. And well, can you really do this? And we're doing it. So it's not on the scale I'd like, but it's on a scale much larger than I might have imagined. And we're helping Susanna and Sloane. What more can we ask? What can we ask out of life?
We obviously can't ask for any more.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's wonderful to see you guys. You come up to Sedona and see us one of these days. Tom,
Yes,
you're eating your steaks, so
Okay, good. They're healthy.
okay. And give Sloane and Griffin and Declan hugs and kisses for us, okay?
Definitely.
All right.
Well, thank you for having
Thanks
us.
again.
Good to see you.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
n-Lorem is a nonprofit committed to discovering and providing personalized experimental treatments for free, for life, to patients with genetic diseases that affect 1 to 30 patients worldwide, referred to by n-Lorem as Nano-rare. Many of these patients progress and die without ever achieving a diagnosis. This is where n-Lorem comes in. They do the impossible by providing hope, and for those that they can help, free lifetime treatment. For more information about n-Lorem or today's episode, visit n-Lorem.org. Any questions can be sent into podcast@n-Lorem.org. Search n-Lorem on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook to connect with us. This video is hosted by Dr. Stan Crook and produced with the help of the following professionals. Thank you for watching.